I am talking here about a historical moment, when I first in charge of the Ministry of Energy, where the living conditions were very difficult, regarding what was happening in downtown, of long lines of queued cars for several days around fuel stations. Also, roads and spaces were dark due to the run-out of hydroelectricity supply of the dam.
Waiting for oil. It is a simple phrase, but it has a profound meaning. Although it is spoken hopefully, its true meaning says there is no hope.
The disappointment I faced then was when I called all the engineers to a meeting. I addressed them. My brothers, we came together to work for achieving the Sudanese dream. The meeting was a bit of morale mobilization for both men and women. But the shock came when the engineers said, "There is no signs of oil in Sudan."
This phrase first appeared as the title for a play, but over time, it became a popular proverb, describing anything that has no hope of happening.
That wasn't from their own minds, but from those who said that in the universities and colleges. The speech was focusing on the idea there is no oil in Sudan.
This idea infiltrated its way into the public and even extended to university circles.
I remember that while we were students at the university, all the indicators and all what was said is that Sudan's current borders were carefully drawn to exclude any possibility to find oil.
In the 70s of the last century, a glimmering hope appeared about the possibility of oil extraction from a land that seemed so sterile.
One of the main reasons that hindered the Sudanese economy during the mid-70s, 80s, and 90s of the last century was lack of fuel. It is known that fuel constitutes a key element for production and services. So its lack affected both services and production very badly.
At that time, American Chevron was authorized to be the franchise company for crude oil prospecting in Sudan.
In that period, probably more than 75% of the usual export revenues goes to the oil bill. If they were 600 million at that time, then 450 million were to be allocated for the oil bill. And we must not forget that the oil constitutes a large proportion of the external debt. This forced the country to lose a lot of its credibility. Since the methods that we followed to provide petroleum products then began to fall, one after another, until we reached a dead end.
In the late 80s, the long lines waiting for fuel frustrated drivers. Meanwhile, the heavy price of imported petroleum products exhausted Sudan's economy.
Petroleum didn't just disrupt Sudanese economy and throw it into troubles, but harmed the national security too. I remember we failed to provide petroleum products for the armed forces fighting in the south. We were under great despair situation. This led to shaking the external image of the country due to eagerly asking for support and aid from different countries. Living the reality without giving up. The reason behind this was the negative results raised by AGIP Company in 1959. When running oil discoveries in the Red Sea, it was probably that which led to slack people off.
However, in the early 90s, the waves of politics nipped that hope in the bud. So Chevron stopped prospecting, and despair came back in again.
We wish that Chevron would have returned again to resume work, or any major foreign corporation to work in Sudan. but the low oil prices then had aggravated our suffering.
In 1993, an authorization was given to the State Petroleum Company of Canada in a desperate endeavor for oil prospecting. Work began in 1995 when an agreement was reached to produce 10,000 barrels of oil. And to celebrate that milestone, a celebration on June 30th, 1996.
I was appointed as a minister to fulfill the aspires of Sudanese people by extracting oil. So I came with different and conflicting feelings. People's aspirations and the response of conditions.
In August 1995, Dr. Awad Ahmad Al-Jaz took on the responsibility of the energy and mining industry. He was determined to extract oil, of which no one had any hope of finding a drop.
And the wait for an unachievable hope. I can easily say that this frustration and despair has come from whom I expected to be hopeful. I am not to blame them. Perhaps they were told that it is useless to think about oil production. Though I found myself thrown in an ocean of non-coast and into an extremely difficult hope. But clinging to Allah the Almighty and my beliefs that in God willing, after hardship comes ease. So long as this was what was left of our faith, we trusted in Allah to begin our endeavor. In my first meetings with my staff at the ministry, I said, we are charged by our people in Sudan, represented by presidency and ministers of the Republic, besides the people's dream to verify if there is hope to find oil in Sudan. That staff meeting was with some brothers we met in Ministry of Energy. And it was a historic indicator regarding those demands that I planned to provide for my people. Despite prudence and fear.
The first steps were taken on a journey surrounded by danger, but the minister made firm promises to handle the difficulties and obstacles which the worried company would face.
Although frustration and disappointment, but not desperation from the mercy of Allah. Therefore, we go on with our project. But I was worried a little bit about who could help us. I didn't ask too much from the people who accompanied me, as I lacked scientific and practical experience in this field.
The actual work began by preparing the infrastructure. Paving the road between the two cities of Heglij and El Mujaled, and reorganizing the railway between El Mujaled and El Obeid were the first steps of the entire process. The area of Abu Quraysh, north of Al Ubaid city, was chosen to be the location for the new refinery. Oil excavation continued, along with construction and the rehabilitation of the infrastructure. After much work and many risks, and several ministerial visits to motivate the workers, everything was nearing completion. The finish was very close, and everyone was preparing for the big occasion. Finally, the oil flowed, and the impossible happened. Here in the Al Ubaid area, everyone celebrated the first oil production coming to Al Ubaid refinery.
It's the will of Almighty Allah, who gets a pure, palatable milk out of obscenity and blood for drinkers. He triumphed us by extracting the Sudanese oil in response to hopes and invocations of righteous citizens. And to those who advocated that there was no hope, among this debate, Sudan's oil was extracted.
This humble beginning was the starting point of a huge project. The ambitions were endless, and the needs of the country were more demanding. The ministry was determined to produce more than 150,000 barrels per day in the first stage. The ministry opened the gate for all major global corporations to invest in the future. "21 global companies competed, and China's bid won the official selection. After extensive consideration and negotiation, quotas were distributed between the following companies: China Petroleum Corporation, CNPC, at 40%, Malaysian Petronas Company at 30%, State Petroleum Canada at 25%, Sudabet Company Limited at 5%. After that, the Ministry of Oil signed the agreement with all contributing parties and the Khartoum refinery contract with China for the fulfillment of the pipeline project. The work has been divided into 3 parts: prospecting and extraction, construction of the pipeline, construction of the refinery. In order to more efficiently do the work, a work team was established for instant customs clearance. The object of this team was to directly clear all equipment and machines out of the port, transferring them into the different work sites. The recommended line route was the first of many challenges. It was a distance of more than 1,000 miles of deserts, valleys, hills, forests. and many areas of fierce armed conflicts. The rivers flooded the road of Port Sudan near the El Kadambalia area. That led to downed pipelines between the harbor and the work sites. Those same floods impeded travelers and their families who were going to Port Sudan for departure. However, the road was repaired by local contributions. Travelers continued their way east, and the pipelines moved westward. Not only was the pipeline being built through harsh geographical conditions, but it remained exposed to sabotage and bombings at different locations. But repairs were done quickly and efficiently. But despite the risks and difficulties, the work throughout all locations continued smoothly. Workers represented different nationalities, had different job specialties, had different specific talents and job ranks. But all the workers shared one goal: to complete the project according to specifications and by the deadline. During the process of completing this huge achievement, some workers were injured. Others even lost their lives to their beloved country, Sudan. Khartoum Refinery, the third triangle of Sudan black gold. Bishail Port, the first Sudanese oil exportation port ever. Many sacrifices were made in order to accomplish this. Finally, after long, hard work, full of danger and extreme difficulties, the project faced some obstacles, but each one was overcome quickly. On June 30th, 1999, oil was delivered. It was a time of great joy for everyone. The minimum limit of 150,000 barrels per day was accomplished, as agreed upon, in spite of internal obstacles and an external boycott. Afterwards, oil flowed through the pipeline to the Bashail port, where it filled the first exploration tank from Sudan. With solid determination and faithful hard work, surrounded by many dangers and difficulties, Sudan Oil broke out. Waiting for oil was no longer an impossible fantasy dream. The impossible became a reality.